Treasure is a special presentation of 28 Tampa Bay News. It can be found in the things we never saw or those we took for granted. It's in the passions that shape us all in different ways.
2, 3.
And those that lead us to a common goal. It's about pioneers who built monuments and those who built memories. It can be found every day or once in a lifetime. And it's all there if you know where to look for Tampa Bay treasure.
Have a look at this road in 1924. Isolated, rutted, and muddy. And typical of what folks here drove on to get from St. Petersburg to Tampa and vice versa. It was a full-day bounce down 43 miles of bad road. But at the end of this road was the future. A lifeline. And a man that would change the face of the bay forever. George Gandy made his name and fortune building railroads and trolleys in Philadelphia. But the greatest project for the man everyone called Dad would come after he'd retired here in 1908.
I always liked this picture of him. I thought it was neat.
Helen O'Brien is Dad Gandy's granddaughter and recalls he was gentle, charming, and gallant.
But this man, I wouldn't have crossed him for $1 million. He was a very determined, very ambitious man.
And one who could look out on the bay and instead of water, see a ribbon of road. Even when locals thought they saw a crazy man.
And the fact that people thought it couldn't be done was the little spur he loved to live by, you know. He loved to meet challenges.
By 1917, Gandy had figured out where to put his bridge, but with World War I raging, he had no men or materiel with which to build it. He would have to wait until 1922. 14 years after Gandy had first proposed a bridge, the economy was strong enough that construction could begin. Steam dredges on both sides began sucking up the bay bottom, and within 18 months had built 2 causeways, the longest of which was 2.5 miles, and as you can see, 65 people wide. Then it was time to drive another 2.5 miles of pilings. And as the bridge took shape, what had formerly been called Dad's Folly now had thousands of believers.
They used to run excursion boats up so people could go up and watch the bridge construction.
Finally, on November 20th, 1924, in the company of 17 state governors, George Gandy cut the ribbon on his bridge. The 2 sides were united at last, and the Tampa Bay area was born. The Gandy Bridge was celebrated as a true wonder of the modern world.
The greatest thing in the grand old South is our new Gandy Bridge. It spans the waters of Tampa Bay. We drive from ridge to ridge.
The bridge was so popular, Gandy was able to charge 75 cents for cars, or a double team of horses. That's the equivalent of $7.15 today. But few complained about the high price. It was simply the cost of riding the future. And from now on, we looked over the bay rather than around it.
Birds are singing Gandy Bridge.
George Gandy once said brains, muscle, and heart had built his bridge. But one can't discount the unflagging drive of the man named Dad, who became the father of the Bay Bridges.
Gandy Bridge.
He's a tremendous player. Brilliant.
He's the Michael Jordan of horseshoes, I think.
He is Carl Steinfeldt, and what he can do with a pair of horses' footwear would leave even Mr. Ed speechless. Amazing.
If I'm on my game, I'll get about 80% ringers. There's a perfect ringer.
And it's a perfect night here at the Clearwater Horseshoe Club to spend some time in the pit with the king of the ringer.
It's just a lot of practice, Bob.
You have a gift, though, don't you?
Well, yes, I think I have. I wish the gift, though, was in another sport where I could make a few bucks.
It hasn't brought money, but Carl's seen his share of recognition. Look inside this 1976 Sports Illustrated. Coincidentally, the first one to feature the Buccaneers on a cover. And there's a big article on his first World Championship win. He's coached presidents and even battled the opposite sex on national TV.
Most horseshoe pitching fans really talk about him with reverence. He's that good.
Carl didn't need any luck from his horseshoes on this day. His skill alone was enough to astonish commentators Vin Scully and Phyllis George.
Can't believe it, can you?
Incredible.
It really is
This
amazing.
man, the bionic horseshoe thrower. Look at that.
45.
He told me of all the years he's been doing different sports, that was the greatest exhibition of skill he had ever seen.
And there it is, 51 points. Would you believe Carl Steinfeldt has thrown 17 out of 18 on the stake?
I got $2,500 for winning that. Every time I pitched a horseshoe, all I could see was those dollar signs in my eyes.
Most of the time, the payoff comes in pride. 35 New York and Florida state titles, 5 world championships. You name it, he's won it.
That silver one has an interesting story. You were really on fire that day.
Yeah, that was back in 1986. I won the championship, and the last day of that tournament, I was fortunate enough to play 2 perfect games. No one's ever played 2 perfect games in a row like that.
Yep, there it is, 50 ringers in a row. He once threw 76 without a miss.
You still get excited when you throw a ringer?
Very excited.
Do you?
For more ringers, I think, whoop, look at that. That was a 2 1/4 turn, hit my leg and went around to extra time.
Still a ringer.
Perfect ringer.
And you still like ringers?
Oh yes, love them.
Carl Steinfeldt, 1976 world champion, throws a 1 1/4 turn.
Perfecting a 40-foot toss has taken Carl thousands of miles. For most of his 80 years, he's competed, taught, and demonstrated in every corner of North America.
From California to Maine to Florida, I even pitched in Alaska.
And he's rung up a long list of admirers along the way.
You know, when you can shoot almost 80% for 40 to 50 years, that's a lot of ringers when you count 8 out of 10 for every 10 chews.
They're coming easier now.
So, the next time you're in the mood to see a master, pull up a bench at Ed Wright Park on a warm Wednesday night. And forget what you've heard about close counting. When King Carl has his eye on the stake, only one thing counts.
Ringers.
Weeki Wachee. It's one of the legendary tourist stops of Florida. But in case you've only ever seen the park's costumed mermaids, we want to show you how easy it is to see the real mermaids living free in the river behind, where Dave Lowry can now rent you a canoe.
Until we opened up here, you had to paddle 8 miles upriver to see this part of the river, or you could take a noisy stink boat. That's what I call motorboats. But now you can see it in peace and quiet, and it's so beautiful up here.
For 12 miles, the spring water snakes from the attraction down to the Gulf and Rogers Park. The Seminoles hit the nail on the head when they named this Weeki Wachee, Winding River.
We get 170 million gallons a day coming out of the spring hole, going right down to the Gulf. It stays clear like this all the way down. You can see all the critters. There's nowhere for them to hide. Hopefully we'll have a lot of manatees to show you today. And
I hope so.
People are out, yeah, they're so cool.
The gentle, even current makes paddling almost an afterthought. It's as though there are rails beneath the canoe, allowing us to sit back, keep our eyes peeled, as we glide over this gin-clear flow.
It's like canoeing on a mirror.
You gotta watch for the big gray rocks, okay?
All right.
That's the manatees.
Oh yes, we do want to see manatees. But in the meantime, Weeki Wachee's smaller stars are making their cameos.
See that osprey on the tree right up ahead?
Oh, yeah, hold on.
We've got a couple pair of ospreys that have nests along the river. This time of year, they have babies in them. Sometimes they swoop down and make people think they have something to be worried about, but you don't. Look at the sheep's head right here. Good-sized sheep's head. That's the smallest heron in North America right there. There's a couple of big yellow-bellied sliders. We got red-bellied sliders out here too.
And then, the moment you never forget.
Here's Bob, right over here, Bob. Look at this manatee swimming right next to the canoe.
Dave was right. They do look like big gray rocks. But the manatee is as rare a jewel as you'll find anywhere in nature. Only 2,000 of them still live in the wild. Many of the happiest ones right here in this spring.
This beats the zoo any day.
If for no other reason, then nature's tank doesn't come with a glass partition. A mask and snorkel offers free admission to the manatee's world. As long as you don't do anything to alter their behavior, this is a simple, natural way to enjoy some quiet time with these docile giants.
Just look at that, it's incredible. Little mermaids, big mermaids. Amazing, and they're so fast.
Perhaps it is because manatees are so big, so utterly defenseless, that we feel purely protective of them. Yet we scar them. Evolution has not given the manatee armor or agility, but it has given them a pretty hefty appetite. An adult with its giant lips to guide food can mow through over 100 pounds of hydrilla grass a day. A single-minded, gentle life.
He doesn't seem like he wants to stay and chat.
No, they're pretty shy sometimes. That's why there's rules against chasing them.
And it was about that time we noticed a change coming over the river.
One bank of the lower part of the river is developed. It happened a long time ago before the other lands were protected. You look across the stream bank and it's just wilderness right outside your front door.
Just around every corner is an old-fashioned swimming hole.
Yeah!
As we round another bend, one final surprise. The real world was waiting. Rogers Park in full frolic. But for 12 miles, the Weeki Wachee gave us a calm, clear ride. The perfect day for anyone content to float past its marvels or join its real mermaids, gliding just under the surface.
You'll always see something new every time you go down.
The Manatee County Central Library, like any library, is filled with fascinating stories. But perhaps the most fascinating can be found just outside the front door here on this plaque. It's the story of the man who owned the land on which the library was built, and one word that links his name with an epic disaster. Readington in 1888 was still known by its quaint original name, Braden Town. And one of the finest homes in the town belonged to the Stanton family. It sat alongside the Manatee River and was the perfect location for the teenaged Ward Stanton to indulge his growing love of sketching steamships. And the very place where more than a century later, another Bradenton artist, Ron Prouty, began his search for Ward Stanton after seeing the movie Titanic.
And I came out of there with really a melancholic kind of feeling, like the tragic sense of loss, all these lost dreams.
So when he came across the library plaque and the two words Stanton and Titanic, Prouty set off on a voyage of discovery.
The plaque only revealed that he was an artist, so right away I had a rapport established with him. So as the research unfolded, I started to find more similarities. For instance, we're both from the state of New York. When he died on Titanic, he's the same age I am now, basically. He was 42, I'm 43. As I found out later on, then he was married and he had 3 children, the same number I have. So what happened is through the course of the research, that rapport was developing. And the gap of 100 years was closing.
Digging deeper, Prouty discovered that Stanton had traveled for years between Bradenton and New York City, where he was an artist and eventual owner of a maritime magazine. In 1910, he seemed to finally have the job he'd always wanted, painting murals for steamships. 2 years later, he traveled to Europe for research.
While in Paris, Ward ran into an old friend of his, a fellow artist by the name of Francis Davis Millet. Millay talked him into changing his ticket in to come back on Titanic. He thought this was a really great opportunity, you know, as a fellow artist and a fellow journalist to do a piece on the Titanic when he got back to the States.
Prouty believes it was Stanton's finest moment.
I imagine Ward Stanton was having the time of his life on Titanic. I believe he had visions of writing an article, an illustrated article about the maiden voyage of this great ship. That was his whole life, drawing and chronicling the history of the American steamship. And here he was, you know, on the greatest steamer ever to exist at that time. And he was on it.
And like more than 1,500 fellow passengers, he'll remain forever frozen in time with Titanic.
Ward Stanton didn't survive the sinking. Neither did his friend Francis Millay. Nothing's really known exactly what happened to him. At the Titanic exhibit in St. Petersburg, they have a really powerful introductory film. And a quote from that really had a deep impact on me. It says, "There's nothing you can do for her.
Or for those who died that night. Nothing you can or should do but guard their memory and tell their story. If you do so with dignity and respect, you will give meaning to their loss."
When I heard that, it practically brought tears to my eyes, thinking about Ward Stanton and how he's gone so many years in his hometown unknown. And that's what compelled me to want to write his story.
A story Ron Prouty has discovered is filled with the dignity and respect Ward Stanton earned in life. And a story of a connection that only his death on Titanic could reveal.
It's a 1,021-foot-long finger that points straight to where the fish live. And that makes Readington Long Pier the perfect perch for landlubbers to wet a line. The days change, but the faces stay mostly the same around here. It's a community unlike any other, bonded by patience and passion, and above all, stories. It seems every time a hook is baited, a story is born. And the longer the pier, the taller the tale.
Oh, a good one. I'll give you a good one.
I got a lot of best ones now.
Lots of stories, lots of war stories.
Most of them aren't true because we're fisher. Bob, you won't believe this. I was fishing right here. This is my favorite spot.
We were fishing with floats.
I threw out as always like that, and then threw this other one out. I set the pole down on the bench, and it wasn't very long. It wasn't 2 minutes. Tap, tap. That float disappeared.
The fish hit on this corner.
It's a really big fish.
It was a big redfish.
It had to be a sizable fish. But that sucker took off.
Took about 50 feet of line, 100 feet of line.
You could actually hear the line going through the water. The pole just went over the rail.
And it went straight this way.
Down around the pier, back up around, then back around.
And real deep, and it drug me all the way to the bait house.
And I watched it, and it went back down out there.
Then the float came back up.
And the whole way I just kept going, it's going to shoot the pier, it's going to shoot the pier, it's going to shoot the pier, and it got up by the bait house, and what did it do? It shot the pier.
Something must have chased it and nipped it, you know.
And he did some nice jumps.
And it was almost to the point where I was going in the water after the fish, because it's shallow water.
Pull the line in. One of these things is about that wide, 32 pounds.
I think it was 55 pounds.
This thing must have weighed about 500 pounds. Really? Well.
It's kind of hard to visualize how big that is, but it's a lot bigger than me.
I fought it for, about an hour and 20 minutes.
We started pulling the line by hand then.
No shoes on, walked the rail, climbed over the top of the shed, across the water tank.
You're stretching this thing out. We caught almost 30 reds.
So we just cut them and let them go.
But he got away.
Oh!
Yeah.
I caught a rod and reel.
47 inches long.
168 pounds on the deck.
Now that is a real fish story, but that's the truth.
I swear. That's true. You ask anybody on this pier. And that was the end of that story, see?
But at any moment, there may be a new tale to tell.
Look at him hit it. Look at him go after it. Got him.
After all, it's a long day on the Long Pier, and they're just getting warmed up.
Let me tell you another story.
All right.
Another story is I was fishing right here.
I was out here yesterday and caught 4 nice flowers.
I really don't like to eat fish. I've fished all over the world.
I got one this morning. It was probably
China,
about 4
Japan,
pounds.
the Philippines.
Is there a pelican on the end of this?
Kwajalein, right after the bombs would drop. necklaces after the war.
They came with the skill of rolling cigars. But the Cubans who first settled in Tampa brought with them their social structure, their politics, and, most memorably, their food. A century later, one item on the menu, the Cuban Sandwich, has become an indelible slice of Tampa life. A staple for sons of West Tampa like E.J. Salsina's.
It was never called Cuban Sandwich. It was always referred to as a mixed. Un sandwichi mixto. A mixed sandwich. With time, particularly during the Second World War, in the Latin area is where the soldiers would come and would get that mixed sandwich. And since it was made in Cuban bread, they would refer to it as a Cuban sandwich.
And as we drift through Saturday morning with our Cubans in hand, it's hard to imagine this meaty mainstay was turn-of-the-century fast food.
They needed something that could be quickly transportable from the casita, or from the home, to the cigar factory. And the sandwich was wrapped in a tissue with a toothpick, and they would take that to work.
This was the working man's food then, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. These were poor people working in the cigar factory that had a very limited time for lunch.
Well, progress hasn't provided us with a longer lunch hour, so the Cuban endures. Long before midday, tens of thousands of fresh loaves of Cuban bread are destined for sandwich shops around the bay. It shouldn't surprise us that pioneers who precisely rolled blends of tobacco also perfected a blend of ingredients to stack on their bread.
She has cut the Cuban bread, and now she's starting with the sugar-cured ham that she is placing, and then she will put the pork, which has been marinated.
Marinated in the mojo. Sour orange, oil, garlic, oregano, peppers, and, well, a formula that no sandwich maker would fully disclose.
Then she's putting the thin slice of salami, Genoa salami.
And the amount is very important.
Of course, because it is a blend. You don't want one to be stronger than the other, or else you'd come up with a Dagwood sandwich. That's not the object.
4 slices of Swiss cheese, 4 sour pickle slices, and the mix is mastered. But in recent years, your garden variety Cuban has become more garden-like for variety. For the record,
the original did not have lettuce and tomato, nor did it have mustard and mayonnaise. This is an addition that has occurred, say, within the last 30, 40 years.
The old way was just butter. And don't forget the toothpick. It's a reminder of the lean years, when a mixed sandwich today could be a wish sandwich tomorrow.
You never threw the toothpick away. You always saved the toothpick, and then, of course, you went back to the factory with your toothpick, and that was a symbol, a status symbol that you had eaten. Not everybody ate.
These days, you can have your Cuban hot-pressed, but that's not something that appeals to the purist's palate. For them, as with a fine cigar, it's all in the mix.
It was an important bridge that brought the different cultures together. It's part of Tampa history, and yet it blends with all of the different cultures, all of the ethnic groups that have developed this community. The Cuban sandwich is that type of an ingredient.
And you see that as we Anglos and Cubans sit down for lunch. A simple sandwich, the cigar roller's staple, has mixed the heart of Tampa by way of its stomach.
Oh boy, what a nice ball field. I wish we had something like this when I was playing.
As we headed out for a morning game of catch, it struck me that, in a way, he's like the grandfather we never realized was still around. The one we wish we'd gotten to know better.
Best player I ever played against? I played a lot against a lot of good ones. Babe Ruth, I guess.
Yes, he was there, alongside the Babe and 100 other legends. And now Lopez is still here to remind us of how full a well-lived life can be.
I don't know. I guess I must have had a little ability, and I like to play. That's the big thing. If you like to play, I was there one of the first ones all the time, and I was one of the last ones to leave the ball field.
It was that attitude that carried a cigar worker's son all the way from Ybor City to Ebbets Field in Brooklyn back in the spring of 1930. He carried with him the dreams of a community. He was, after all, our first major leaguer. The major leagues must have seemed an impossible dream.
Yeah, you're right. You know, here I am playing ball, sandlot ball, and all of a sudden I'm up in the big leagues playing Major League Baseball against guys that I idolized.
And this man, Al Lopez, is a good catcher.
Al Lopez wasn't content to be just our first baseball star. His name would become synonymous with durability. In 19 seasons, he caught 1,918 games for 4 teams, a record that would stand for 31 years. Look at these hands. Those have seen some injuries.
That hand's taken a beating. I think I've had every one of them broken a couple of times, and I had a compound fracture on this one here.
Now the Cleveland Indians are in town, led by the chief himself, manager Al Lopez.
By 1951, his playing days were over, but Al's life was just rounding first. He'd always had a reputation for smarts, and Cleveland was quick to take advantage. That year, the Indians made Al the first Tampa-born Major League manager. The kid from Ybor would spend the next 15 years chasing Casey Stengel's mighty Yankees through baseball's golden era.
Oh, they were awesome. They were powerful, you know. During that regime, we finished second 5 times to the Yankees. We chased them all the time. But finally in '54, we caught them. Cleveland Indians, American League champions in 1954.
That was your big team.
We won 111 ball games that year. Don't ask me what happened in the World Series, though.
This is the first World Series for Al Lopez, manager of the Indians.
Al was shrewd, but he was also snake-bit in the big one. Willie Mays pulled off baseball's most amazing catch, and the Giants pulled off the upset, sweeping the Indians. And again in '59, this time with Chicago, Al would lose the series to the Dodgers. But even with the big losses, he's remembered as a man who spent 17 seasons turning losers into winners. Well enough that in 1977, he became the first person from Tampa to get the call from Cooperstown.
I want to thank you for the proudest and happiest moment of my life.
We've always tried to be mindful of Al's memory because he's never forgotten about us. In 1954, the city built a beautiful new ballpark, named it after him. But it only lasted till 1989. Imagine outliving your own memorial. These days, you'll find Al's name in a park or on this statue, but he prefers a different legacy.
This is Elizabeth, my granddaughter's 2 babies.
How many do you have?
We have 7 altogether. 7 great-grandchildren.
The legacy of family and of followers. 68 years ago, who could have imagined the galaxy of local stars who would follow his path to greatness? And he was our first. 90 years from this house in Ybor to all those memories. Life, like baseball, is a game of distance, not time. No wonder Al Lopez is so good at it.
I have no regrets. Everything is beautiful. It couldn't have been any better.
An early morning stroll through the woods of Florida may feel like you're walking on terra firma, but if you take along marine conservationist Bruce Ryan, soon you'll realize there's a hidden world, constantly changing shape underfoot.
Well, Florida's like a giant sponge, and underneath us, like the holes in a sponge, are all these caves and caverns and all kinds of passages leading down to the aquifer.
You can't see it. You can't feel it below, but it's there. An aquatic maze that, if you walk a little farther, may reveal itself in a subtle way. A country pond, maybe a gateway to another world.
This is Ward Sink, located in Pasco County. And it is a typical Florida sinkhole. And not the ones that open up underneath people's houses. This has been here for a very long time. This particular sinkhole probably formed thousands and thousands of years ago by a room dropping out underneath. It is the standard hourglass-shaped format. It's wide at the top, it drops down, narrows down, and then it opens wide open at the bottom, so where the bottom of it, which is about 200 feet, may be the circumference of the top part here, way underground here. And in the middle is a debris cone, a millennia of stuff just falling down, it's just like the sand in an hourglass does.
And since he's also an expert cave diver, Bruce knows the best way to see this is not from above, but from below.
When we get down and when you look up, that's when you'll know about crackling blue clear. It's just beautiful.
Can we go diving now?
Let's go diving.
It's a leap of faith into the brisk water. We head for the depths with the aid of a safety line and Bruce's guiding light. The flashlight, that is.
As we go down the walls here, you can look and see that there's a fossil record, Florida's fossil record, as we descend.
Look closely at those walls, and you may see a rare resident, like this loggerhead musk turtle, or pools of air that collect, mercury-like, in the overhangs. These are from other divers. The water may be getting clearer, but it's also getting a lot dimmer. By the time we reach 100 feet, it's like a black hole. Underwater photographer Steve Barrett and I rest atop the debris cone at a depth of 120 feet, in a sunken speedboat that's been resting there for years. Bruce, though, plunges a further 50 feet down the side of the cone. In just a few minutes, he's back, and we head to the surface. On the way to the top, we see firsthand what divers refer to as crackling blue clear water. Having made a deep dive straight down into a sinkhole, Bruce leads us to another underwater phenomenon. It's time to go underground.
Here's beautiful Blue Grotto. This place is unreal. It is unlike the other site that we were at today, which was a typical Florida sinkhole. This is a slightly atypical Florida spring. And we're going to be going underneath this cliff right here. It's a massive cavern zone, huge. It's so much bigger than what you could see here. It just doesn't even give it justice till you get under there.
It's a grotto.
It's a grotto underwater. It's amazing.
Unlike the sinkhole, the rocks will close in over our heads here. Blue Grotto's highlight is a long, looping tunnel, 95 feet from the surface. It's not for the claustrophobic or the novice diver. With the aid of a rope, we wind our way through the sunken boulders until, finally, an awesome exit comes into view. This is a true wonder of nature.
It's like a jewel, like an emerald. It just shimmers, it's crystal clear, it's fresh water, and it's just beautiful.
Dive the Bay Area caverns, and you'll leave the water reluctantly. And afterward, you'll never look at the ground the same way again. If the ghosts of shuffleboarders could talk, they'd tell you that these were the real people's courts. If you wanted to worship in the Cathedral of Shuffleboard, you were one of the hundreds who joined the St. Pete Shuffleboard Club on Mirror Lake. It's getting tougher to find opponents these days, but old pro Virginia Farr is always up for a nickel game.
That is world-class form, Virginia.
Well, that's the general idea.
You think there's hope for the game of shuffleboard?
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't understand why more people don't take it up and get you out in the fresh air. And you're with friends. And it beats sitting home and watching television all the time.
Well, I don't know about that. But if you ever want a lesson in humility, shuffleboard can provide it.
Now, that wasn't very smart. No, that's not the way to do it.
I always hear this term, sliding into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Where's the kitchen?
That's this area down the other end, which is the 10 off area.
All right.
And you certainly don't want to get in there, because that's 10 off your score.
Oh! Would you try and knock me into the kitchen?
I would try.
Would you?
I might.
Me?
You might. You or anybody.
All right.
I'm not fussy about who I put in the kitchen.
Crafty old bird.
I know it.
Yes, it is a fascinating game of skill and finesse. And the instruction book shows that 2 world-renowned shuffleboard blocks actually bear our name.
I'm going to try to make a Tampa block. Now that isn't too bad. Now this is what they call a St. Pete block.
And you'll try and hide in behind that?
That's right.
In the midst of the glory years, players across the country bestowed upon the St. Pete Club a great honor. They chose to make this what Cooperstown is to baseball, Canton is to football. The site of the National Shuffleboard Hall of Fame.
Now in here we have some of the top players of shuffleboard through the years.
Only a handful of visitors will drop by each year to remember the shining shufflers of yore, who smile proudly despite all the dust and neglect. A must-see stop on the 3-room tour is the Q display with its weird and wild contraptions.
That's what I'd call indescribable.
The hall is a good look at the good old days.
Only one person showed up this morning out of 11 people.
But the future? Well, that depends on the dwindling diehards like Virginia.
No, I've got the last shot, so the thing for me to do is get you out of there, because you might be able to push it into a counter.
Her brain is a whirl of strategy.
See, and I made an 8.
Did well. All right.
When I first started 31 years ago, some people were despairing then. They said, this isn't going to last long, and here it is 31 years, and it's still going.
And so were we, sliding late into the afternoon, shuffleboards present and future, side by side, with the ghosts all around. It's easy to ignore the weeds creeping in when you've got an old friend here ready to knock you into the kitchen and remind you of the charm of this game that we gave the world.
Very good. You'd make a good shuffler.
Webb City. It was the brainchild of James Stock Webb. He wasn't really a doctor. In fact, he earned the nickname selling snake oil in Tennessee. What Doc Webb really was a retail rebel.
He would give away almost anything. He would give away cigarettes, he'd give away food to get people in. It's really not much to look at now, but in the heyday, it was one big mess of buildings.
Bob Aukerman grew up in St. Petersburg and remembers when this parking lot used to be the home of the world's most unusual drugstore. Webb City covered 10 blocks and had 77 different departments, a magnet for bargain hunters.
And they were always packed with people, full of people, and there was people everywhere. And he always had something that was practically free to get people in there. His philosophy was, I don't care about the money, I want customers.
And he got mobs of them. Like moths to a light, tourists and locals alike were unable to resist the lure of a 2-cent breakfast before joining in the crush in search of Doc's latest bribe.
If he could get you into his store for buying a candy bar for a penny or a cigarette for 5 cents, and then you look over there and you see something that would cost $10 or something like that, and you felt you had a bargain, you know, that's the way he made his money.
But the good doctor wasn't content to just let bargains be his draw. And that's why no trip to Webb City was complete without a visit to the top floor. Nowhere else could you find live mermaids, or chickens that would dance and sing, or rabbits that would drive, and all for just a dime. The top floor made Webb City legendary.
Just a big carnival. The whole top floor was a carnival. He loved that. That was part of the way he did business, you know.
Webb, the master promoter, rarely missed a photo opportunity. When he did stand aside, though, it was usually to show off his most beautiful bargain, the Webb's poster girls.
Doc Webb loved beautiful girls, and he was small in stature, and so he especially liked long-legged, tall girls. Those were his favorite. Everywhere we went, there was a platform on the bus.
June Young was one of a stable of charm school graduates that were picked every year to promote Webb City, around Florida.
That was at Rainbow Springs.
And around the country.
Curvaceous Florida lovelies visit Knoxville.
Without having to pay them a dime, Webb turned his poster girls into local stars. In the process, he sold more than fashions.
And in a town like St. Petersburg that was known for its bench sitters and older people, it was telling the whole U.S. and the world that we have lovely young people here.
It was the original mall. Every department had gimmicks. Most of them were under one roof. So it was very similar to the malls of today.
As those malls began to creep closer, Doc Webb, like any good snake oil salesman, knew it was time to fold up his tent. In 1972, he sold Webb City and retired wealthy and revered.
He was a champion of the poor man. He wanted to help everybody that didn't have much money.
Without its dynamic founder, Webb City eventually died. However, the next time you're in a mall, try and remember that it's probably there because of Doc Webb's ideas. It's just too bad they forgot to bring along the live mermaids.
It was a place to go. It was a carnival. It was the world's most unusual drugstore.
He's a 4-foot, 4-inch fixture on the red brick streets of Hyde Park. Just about any day you can see Carl Slover out walking his dog. Carl may look small, but he's led a very large life thanks to a trip he took once upon a time down a brick road of a different color.
Follow the yellow brick road.
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 Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Oh yes, Munchkins do exist. And this wizened little sprite is proof.
I actually had 5 parts in The Wizard of Oz. I was the first trumpeter, the last one out of the nest of eggs, one of the soldiers,
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
one of the ones that sang Follow the Yellow Brick Road, and then they had 4 of us midget men dressed like women because there were more midget men than women.
In 1938, Karchi Koziski, as he was then known, was a charming, chubby-cheeked 21-year-old vaudeville star in Europe with the popular Leo Singer midgets. The flamboyant singer convinced the producers of the new Judy Garland film that his little people were just what was needed to sing and dance over a dead witch in the mythical Munchkin land. In all, 124 singer midgets made their way to the U.S. and onto a set that Carl could scarcely believe.
I said to my roommate, I said, you know, I motioned to him, I said, you know, that there an apple tree made a face at me. He says, there's no such a thing as an apple tree making a face.
Ouch! What do you think you're doing?
So we got a big bang out of it then, you know.
At the time, his turn as a Munchkin seemed like just another job.
How much were you paid?
Well, we were supposed to all get $100 each a week. And my boss, he swallowed half.
Who got more, you or Toto?
Toto got more than we did.
Did he?
Oh, yeah.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Toto got, I think, twice as much as I did.
After his work with The Wizard was done, Carl stuck around Hollywood for a few more years for walk-ons in such films as He Got a Gun with Spencer Tracy and Blockheads with Laurel and Hardy.
Thank you. All right.
But while Hollywood was losing its fascination for midgets, the world was just beginning its love affair with the Munchkins. Television turned the all-but-forgotten Wizard of Oz into an ageless family favorite.
You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. You'll find he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was.
If ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because
the Wizard is so woven into America's fabric, Carl's yellow brick journey is a never-ending blur of conventions and personal appearances. A lifetime of recognition for 7 weeks of work in 1938.
That was really fun, even though it was work, but it was fun.
A good and wise witch once said,
"There's no place like home.
There's no place like home."
And for Carl Slover, that place is Hyde Park. But he'll always have another home in the hearts of movie fans everywhere.
Because of the wonderful things she does. Tra-la-la-la-la-la. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
It was the spring of 1939, and already the heat was unbearable. Florida hadn't seen so much as a single raindrop in 40 days, and the citrus trees were beginning to wither. For Polk County farmers and growers, the situation was getting desperate, and armed with only primitive irrigation, they looked to the skies for salvation. But there wasn't a rain cloud in sight, and forecasters predicted nothing but more dry weather. Time was running out. The parched plants would soon be lost. The time had come to make a decision that until now would have seemed crazy. But that day would be talked about and passed down for generations. The day they called the Rain Lady. Miss Lillie Stoate was a 67-year-old spinster from Oxford, Mississippi, who wasn't much bigger than a raindrop, but she seemed to possess a peculiar power over water. As a self-proclaimed rainmaker, her record was pretty good. She'd broken many droughts in Mississippi before, simply by sitting next to a pond or lake for 8 hours. As unusual as all this sounded, she was the farmer's last hope. So, on March 24th, a frail and deaf old lady arrived in Frostproof, carrying only her trademark umbrella. Few of the townsfolk believed that she could make good on her promise to summon rain, but she didn't care. True to her legend, Miss Lillie picked a spot beside Lake Reedy, sat down, and put her mind to the task. An hour or so later, she suddenly gazed across the lake and cried out,
"There it is! There it is! The clouds are gathering! We shall certainly have rain by tomorrow!"
For 7 more hours she sat. No rain. The next day also dawned sunny and dry. But within 24 hours of her arrival, just when it looked like the Rain Lady was a hoax, a miracle. Rain, glorious rain, began pouring from the skies, a good soaking that gave those thirsty crops new life. Miss Lillie watched proudly, safe in the knowledge that her peculiar power over water was intact. But whether she brought the rain was in hot debate. The newspapers shouted to the world Miss Lillie's supernatural powers saved the crops. However, scientists at the Weather Bureau tried to pour cold water on her success, attributing the rains to Gulf breezes. Some things you couldn't argue with, though. The crop was saved. Frostproof had reaped a shower of publicity. And Miss Lillie Stoate, a 67-year-old spinster from Mississippi, was a local legend. The lady who pointed to the skies and made it rain.
Go get them, guys.
You could call them the Iron Man of the Diamond.
Okay, play ball.
It's a league of their own, where the minimum age is 75.
Good afternoon. Welcome to North Shore Park, home of the world-renowned Kids and the Cubs.
Hey!
We've been in existence since 1930.
Come on, George!
Now, how it ever got the name Kids and Cubs, we haven't quite figured that out yet. But it was done back in the 30s. So we figured if it's that far back, we'll just hold on to it.
And by holding on to the game, they've been able to hold on to something more precious.
makes them feel young, really, and I think that's the secret to the whole thing. They're doing something they did as a kid, and they feel pretty good about it.
My name's Bert Clearwater. I'm 75 years old, and I'm a rookie.
He's just a rookie. You have to pardon that.
Walter Brooks is no rookie. No need to ask him his age. He wears it well.
90. 90.
All right.
His once smooth stride to first base has left him long ago.
Hey, all righty, I'm a little slow. Okay.
But he gets there just the same.
No, too bad.
No.
It gives me something to do. If I didn't have this here to do, I guess I'd be sitting home in the old rocking chair watching TV. Here we go.
This batter's George Chenoweth. He's 76 from St. Louis, Missouri.
Attaboy! Good hit, George!
Hal is 79 years old from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Whoa, go!
Gil is 80 years old.
All right, all right.
Don is 79 years old. Harry is 85 years old.
Good shot.
I'm always glad when he gets out on first and he doesn't have to run the rest of the bases.
I got a pacemaker, but I don't pay any attention to it. And I guess it's working.
That's one thing you never do down here. You never go and ask somebody, how you feeling? You just say, how are you? Because if you say, how are you feeling, he's going to tell you all these aches and pains and all this stuff, and you'll be there forever. That's why we don't do that.
At this age, being part of the team sometimes just means being there for a teammate.
We're signing a sympathy card. One of our players' wives died, and it's customary we get all the players to sign cards and pass it on to him.
2 outs.
Uh-oh, 2 outs.
Some say the game's already passed them by.
My kids have said that for years, and I don't pay any attention to them.
But that's the beauty of baseball. It's not over till the final out. So swing for the fences. One more hit, and the kids and Cubs can keep life's rally alive.
It's really my second childhood. I'm really having a lot of fun, and I love to play this game.
As long as we're able, it's great.
It keeps them out of that rocking chair. That's the main thing.
Batter's out.
The final score was 14-20.
It's game day.
Hey,
all right, howdy, baby.
Okay, big guy.
All right.
Nice game.
All right,
Good game,
Paul.
Jimmy. Sorry about the wife.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Pretty good game.
Till next time.
I don't stay up late. I go to bed early. So don't put it on the late show.
Thousands of us drive past it every day. The ornate white tower rising up where the Hillsborough River crosses 275. It's an historical landmark that can never be torn down. But what is it? And who built it? To find the answers, come about a half-mile east to Nebraska Avenue and the once famous Sulphur Springs.
This is the main pool where the water, this underground river, comes out to the surface. And you see the boil there in the middle, and then it flows down over into what they call the lagoon area.
As a local kid in the 50s, Linda Hope remembers the days when squeals of delight would mix with the sounds of traffic and music and the rushing waters here in Tampa's favorite swimming hole.
That's how this whole area started. People would come for the waters, for the healing powers of the waters, and that's been
And for the right man, there was more than just water bubbling up from below. There was money. And that man bought the land in 1904.
Josiah Richardson was an ambitious man. He was a developer. Josiah knows where money grows was his motto. It had been in a very natural state. So he built the wall around it, and then they started building like the bathhouses and the archway, the walkway, and everything.
Richardson would turn the springs into Tampa's Coney Island, with a hotel and casino, alligators on display, and a giant water slide called the toboggan that was billed as the most thrilling water sport ever invented. There was advertising on every available surface, and of course, the pools.
And this was a place to see and be seen. And we've got pictures of people who are swimming. A lot of the locals were swimming, but the tourists were promenading.
Now that the Springs had captured a crowd, Richardson knew he'd need a place for them to spend their money.
So Josiah built what he called an arcade and a home for businesses, and he built it here in the center of this little community. It was a large, lovely place.
Full of businesses and a hotel, the arcade was our earliest mall. It was said that going to a movie or to church were the only things you couldn't do here. That and turn on a tap at first.
They hadn't provided a water source.
Forgot it?
Just, well, you know, these things get lost sometimes. So there we have the water tower. And why, if he was going to build something, why not make it outstanding? So here we have in this utilitarian water tower, we have these slotted windows, we have a crenellated top, we have this fancy cement work.
Unlike the tower, however, Richardson's foundation was not built on bedrock. The Great Flood of 1933 bankrupted the developer. He died a broken man. His beloved arcade was demolished for parking in 1976, and over 10 years ago, a flood of pollutants closed the Springs to swimmers. But Linda may get a chance to swim here again with a new plan to build chlorinated pools alongside the now rejuvenated springs.
And then there's also going to be a picnic area all around in here with picnic shelters and picnic areas, places for families to come and enjoy their day. So it's going to be real nice. It's going to be real nice.
Seems things are always changing around this neighborhood, just like they did in Joe Richardson's day. But count on two things to stay the same. Clear water will always flow, and the tower will always stand watch over Sulphur Springs, Tampa Bay's first resort.